On the night of the 19th of September 1957, Major Chase was skipper of an RB-47 aircraft that took off from Forbes Air Force Base, Kansas, on a training flight. Equipped for electronic countermeasures, ECM for short, Major Chase's RB-47 was a spy-plane version of the six-jet Boeing B-47 bomber. Its capabilities included locating enemy ground-based radar units, identifying carrier frequency systems, pulse rates and width, scan speed and bearing. The purpose of the mission that took place on September 19th was for gunnery exercises, navigations over the Gulf of Mexico, and ECM exercises over the southern central United States. Accompanying Major Chase was a co-pilot, a navigator, and 3 other officers whose task it was to observe the 3 ECM monitors on board. On Monitor 1 was the direction finding system, which was receiving signal from the antennae on the wingtips. On Monitor 2 was the back-to-back antennae, which spins in a housing underneath the rear fuselage of the plane. The signals that this array collects are processed in a radar receiver and a pulse analyzer. Monitor 3 had no involvement that evening. While the plane made its way back from the Gulf of Mexico, they passed over the Mississippi coastline, close to the Gulfport, and made their way to Jackson, Mississippi, where the ECM exercises were to take place at an altitude of around 30,000 feet and at a speed of 575 miles an hour. It was at this point when Captain McClure, who was observing Monitor 2, picked up a signal frequency of 2800 MHz, a range often used for search radars. The radar scope revealed the signal was coming from a 5 o'clock position, which meant the signal was coming from behind them to the right-hand side of the plane and out over the sea. Slightly confused by this, Captain McClure just thought there must be some mistake, and that the signal traces from the 2 antennas had somehow switched, and the signal was actually coming from a ground radar unit located in Louisiana, which would have been coming from the 11 o'clock position. The radar kept showing a blip in an upward movement, eventually making its way to a 4 o'clock position. Then it reached 3 o'clock and continued until it passed 12 o'clock. From that point, it continued in a downward movement. It was at this moment that Captain McClure realized that there could be no mistake. The signal was correct, but what could be making this happen? Were they being tested by their own government? In an evasive move, the RB-47 changed course at Jackson and started to head in a westward direction towards Fort Worth and Dallas. All of a sudden, the pilots saw a white light ahead of them. Before they could do anything, the light shot across from left to right in front of their aeroplane in what would seem like a maneuver to prevent them from bearing left or right and keep them moving straight on ahead. During these moments, Captain McClure could hear the pilots talking about the light over the intercom. He then joined the conversation and told them that he had picked up a puzzling signal earlier on. At this moment, Monitor 2 picked up a strong signal at a 2 o'clock position. The signal remained in this position, maintaining a constant relative position to the aircraft. In what seems a pretty unnerving situation, the UFO followed the RB-47 for 100 miles. Major Chase made contact with Carswell Air Force Base, where a ground control intercept radar was being operated in the hope that they would be able to cast light on the mystery. Monitor 1 was now clearly confirming that there really was a UFO at the 2 o'clock position, and Carswell Air Force Base came back with further confirmation that there was indeed another aircraft 10 miles from the RB-47 at 2 o'clock. Captain McClure immediately realized that the blip that had puzzled him had been a true reading of an unknown signal source, which was now circling the RB-47 during their flight. The UFO, which originally appeared as a mystery blip on Captain McClure's monitor, was now moving forward, and it was detected every step of the way by both the ground control intercept at Carswell Air Base and Monitor 2 on board the plane. When the UFO reached the 12 o'clock position and was in front of them again. Both pilots could now actually see it. This time, they described it as glowing red and bigger than a house. Between Fort Worth and Dallas, the UFO changed its direction, and Major Chase received permission to pursue it. It wasn't long before he realized that he was closing the distance between the object and his plane. Suddenly, the glowing UFO vanished, along with all traces of it on the radars that had been tracking it. Major Chase maneuvered the RB-47 towards the left, and the light suddenly reappeared, but this time it was nearly 15,000 feet lower. The object had also returned to the radars. The pilot then received direction to drop the altitude of his plane towards the object, so he brought it down more than 19,500 feet. But as he did so, the light vanished from sight, and on all radars once more. With fuel running low, Major Chase began to head for Oklahoma, climbing to 25,000 feet. Moments later, the crew received word from Carswell Air Base that the UFO had reappeared on their radars and was now behind them in a 6 o'clock position, following them from a distance of 10 miles. But the signal eventually disappeared once they reached southern Oklahoma. Altogether, the encounter had lasted for more than an hour and covered a distance of over 800 miles. Multiple officers, including some from Project Blue Book, conducted investigations into the incident, but as expected, no new answers could be found. This case, like many others like it, will probably remain a mystery just as it has done for over 60 years. Lieutenant James R. Salandin of the 604th Middlesex Squadron, Royal Air Force, was flying a Meteor twin-jet fighter plane when he had a close call, almost crashing into a UFO over the skies of Southend-on-Sea, Essex, England. The first-hand account was originally told to Derek Dempster, who happened to be an ex-RAF pilot, who is now the editor of Flying Saucer Review. The story appeared in the first issue, and was treated with a lot of respect since he knew how pilots valued their professional reputation. It was the afternoon of October 14th, 1954, a day that started like any other. Salandin reported for duty at North Weald, Essex, in the southeast of England. There, he began weekend flight routines. At 4:15 p.m, he took off in his Meteor Mark 8 jet into a blue, almost cloudless sky, where he soon watched two other meteors flying in formation high above him, leaving long vapor trails behind them. Checking on them again after reaching 16,000 feet over Southend, he witnessed two circular UFOs flying in the opposite direction of the fighter jets. He watched as they flew right between them. He described one object as having a chrome appearance and the other as being gold. Stunned at what he was seeing, Salandin kept watch of them until they disappeared high over his left side. He turned his head back to his equipment, wondering what he'd just seen. Quickly, he then adjusted his attention to the direction he was travelling, and was shocked to see a silver object heading straight towards him. In a few split seconds, the object had passed over him, just narrowly missing. He described the object as having a bun-shaped top, a flange like two saucers in the middle, and a bun underneath. He also added that it could not have been far off because it overlapped the windscreen. Badly shaken by the experience, the lieutenant decided to fly around for 10 minutes to regain his composure. After landing, he reported the incident to ground control, but never found out if the other pilots had reported their encounters. It's also not known if the case was investigated further. What do you think he saw? Could these objects have been some kind of secret test craft, or was it something from another world?